experience in here. And my body of experience wasn't simply my physical body, it is the matrix of the entire universe. We are beings not only of biological dimension, we are beings of cosmic dimension and connection. So here's what I learned. This is one of the most important things I can share. Domination doesn't work, dancing does. Domination doesn't work, dancing does. When you dance, both parties are changed. Both parties are changed. I move, it moves. We're in this together. I feel the apparatus within me. I move, it moves. It's a dance. We understand this in everyday life. If you push on someone, they're going to push back. Go to the club with Carrie and say, let's dance. That's a whole different thing. And so there are deep principles that we're just beginning to rediscover that have been known for thousands of years by more indigenous ancient cultures. And here's the point. The universe is a living system. And we have assumed for the last 300 or 400 years through science that it's mostly dead matter and empty space. Dead matter and empty space. And what I have found is that the entire universe is a single living system. And I want to speak about that. I want to speak about that briefly, but very pointedly, as the universe is a living system. We know, for example, now from physics that the universe is unified. This is called non-locality. We know from physics that there is an immense amount of energy resident in the universe. It's just a phenomenal amount of energy. And this energy isn't static, it is flowing through the universe. We also know through science, and I'd love to share this with you if we had enough time, but we know from science that consciousness, sentience, awareness can be found not only at the human level, but in plants, in fish, in other animals. Consciousness can be found in single-cell bacteria. There are physicists that are talking about the consciousness found at the level of atoms and the choices that atoms are making. So we live in a universe of profound consciousness, profound connectedness, profound aliveness, and it doesn't intrude. If we want to say it's a dead universe and it's indifferent to us, no problem. No problem. It'll let us do that. Very patient. But if we want to say this is a living universe that is active, it responds to us, we're in a dance with it, great. It will. It will respond to that dance.
Turn up the other mic.
Sure.
Just turn it up.
That's it.
It's still building. Going
Yes. Вот.
Let me share with you a very important quote for me to introduce the next session. And that is a quote from a man I have a huge amount of respect for. His name is James Speth. James Speth is one of the ultimate insiders in Washington politics. He was the head of the Council on Environmental Quality. He was one of the key persons that made environmental policy in the United States for decades. So here is what a key So here is what Gus Speth recently said. Quote, I used to think the top environmental problems facing the world were global warming, environmental degradation, and ecosystem collapse, and that we scientists could fix those problems with enough science. But I was wrong. The real problem is not those three items, but greed, selfishness, and apathy. And for that, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. We need your help. We need your help in politics, in culture, in society, beyond individual therapy, beyond family therapy. Our world needs help. And some of the most knowledgeable people on this planet that have spent their entire lives looking at the condition of the earth saying, we were wrong. This is not an engineering problem. It isn't about more fuel-efficient cars and light bulbs. This is about our soul as a species. This is about us and the level of apathy, the level of ignorance, the level of disregard that we may have for the earth and one another. And for that, we need a spiritual transformation. So, I'd like to ask you a question. And this is a question that I have been asking all around the world now for about 15 years. And it's a crucial question for understanding, I feel, the future of the species and where we're going to be going from here. It's a simple question, really. The question is this: when you look at the whole human family, and if you would put us all together as one person, a social average, if you will, what life stage are we in? When you look at the behavior of the human family, all of us, are we toddlers? Are we teenagers? Are we adults? Or are we elders? 4 choices. Toddlers, teenagers, adults, or elders. Now, I would like you to take 4 minutes, turn to someone you don't know, hopefully, and we're going to talk about this. And then I want to take a vote and see what the collective intelligence, the collective consciousness, the collective wisdom of this community says about the life stage of the human family. So please go ahead.
Надо показать, на каком состоянии ты чувствуешь. Маленькие
Состояние человечества, подросток или старейший, или как? Ну да,
здесь, конечно, мы такие лет 10, 12, не больше, потому что играем. Даже выборка нет, лет 5-6 возьмем оружие, играем, война, не такая, очень сразу, там, бегает, там. Даже меньше.
Нет, я имею в виду в человечестве.
Человечестве нет. Тем больше. Как в первом-втором классе играют, я играю там. Гранату тебе может никто не знает, что если это люди, кто думает, конечно, скажем, общество не думает. Если кто думает,
Вообще тема даже не муссируется практически. Практически СМИ. Ну так.
так есть в мире люди, которые говорят, да, общество, знание, все это
Такой приоритет.
All right.
То, что я вчера говорила.
Okay, let's come back together. I don't like to break up a good conversation, so I encourage you to continue this conversation at lunch and later on. Powerful. Okay, let's take a vote. Let's see what the collective intelligence of this international gathering says about the life stage of the human family. How many would vote that we're in our toddler stage as a human family? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Embryo.
Every-
2 years old. 2 years.
You're 2?
2 years old. Toddler.
Okay. How many would vote that we're in our teenage stage as a human family? Just overwhelming. I'd say at least 3/4. Okay, how many would vote that we're in our elder, or in our adult stage? Adult? Great. A courageous soul here. 1. Yes, more. 2. Okay, 2 for adults. And okay, finally, how many for elder? Elders? Courage. Elder. All right. Now, this is so interesting because I've asked this question, as I mentioned, all around the world. I've asked it, for example, in India, I asked a group of about 400 young women. They were graduating as school teachers. They were going to go all over India teaching school. I thought, this is a great time to ask this question. I had no idea if they would understand the question or what they would say. So I asked. They kind of laughed. And they didn't need to even take the time to talk about it. But I asked them to talk. And it was overwhelming that they thought we, as a human family, were in our adolescence. Just looking at our behavior. Now, I've asked this of business leaders in Brazil, spiritual leaders in Japan. I've asked it in Canada, Europe, the United States. I've asked it in churches, schools, businesses. And again, it's on my website. This same information comes back. We're behaving like adolescents as a human family. Now, this is good news, I think. A lot of people say, oh, well, this explains why we have so many problems. But on the other hand, think about adolescence. They have a huge amount of energy, they have a huge amount of enthusiasm, they have a lot of passion, they have enormous idealism. What do we need to move from our adolescence and into our early adulthood? We need the energy of that adolescent energy to move us forward. Now, the only problem is, as many of us here in this room probably know, getting from adolescence and into adulthood was a fiery process. There is a rite of passage. There is suffering. There is heartache in going from your adolescence and into your adulthood. Now, looking at our future as a human family, do we have heartache in our future? Do we have suffering in our future? Do we have a rite of passage in our future? Absolutely. Now, is that an accident? No, we created it ourselves. Species extinction, resource depletion, climate change, and all the rest. So what we are doing is creating the conditions, fundamentally, for our own rite of passage to our adulthood. We're just trying to grow up. And we make this way complicated, I think, when the reality is, as a species, as a human family, we're just trying to grow up. Now, I'd like to ask another question. What was it in your life that was most important for you moving from your adolescence to your adulthood? And here's the key premise. What was most important for you could well be the most important thing for the entire human family. And we're going to explore that idea in just a few minutes. But I would like you, once again, to turn to someone you haven't met and say, no, what was it in your life that was so powerful that took you from your adolescence and into your early adulthood? Please go ahead.
Это детство?
Ответственность. Но не мне, но своим друзьям.
Я оправдала его доверие и ожидания. Но сколько это уже правильно?
Я не выбрал, он выбрал. Это не продал. Или это что родители хотят. Мама хочет пьяную играть в стиле, поставить эта дочка играет, а мама вообще не хочет. Дочка может вообще танцевать. Потому что если взрослый, тогда понимаешь, ответственность.
Я тоже пожелаю себя учиться, потому что моя мама. Я, в принципе,
All right. Let's come back together. Once again, this is a powerful question, and I would encourage you, and you'll see why, at lunch and beyond, to continue exploring this conversation. So I'd like to ask a volunteer or two to speak very shortly, just a sentence or two about their life and what made the difference for them. Do we have any volunteers? Bernard.
For the four of us, there is a common denominator, which is actually the discovery of the importance of the other. Of becoming aware of outside of the class family tree.
Discovering the importance of the other outside of the classical.
Meaning, one is about ecology movement, another one is about the war in Vietnam, and first love, but it has in common.
Okay, good, thank you. Thank you. Who? Yes, please.
So in our group, what was important is some crucial place of suffering, and for someone in the group getting involved as an adult into some action. So the sense of taking responsibility for one's life, one's choices.
Right. Thank you.
Такая же ситуация. Я сделал свой выбор и сделал это осознанно. И я взял на себя ответственность за то, что я делаю, и увидел связь тех действий и результатов, которые они делают. И это позволило мне как-то подняться над собой подростком и осознать жизнь более осознанном ключе и понять, как взрослый человек.
I made a conscious choice and I saw the connection between my choice and the resulting actions.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, sir. For me.
Yes. No.
All right. If we had more time, we would explore this. We would explore this. And it is such a powerful question. And I want to tell you what some people from different parts of the world have said as feedback, to share some of the collective wisdom of the human family. One of the first things that comes back is a brush with death, an encounter with death, a recognition of mortality. Someone in your family dies, a friend dies, people say, you know, I'm not necessarily going to be here forever. And it wakes people up. Number two, taking responsibility. You go off to college. You go off to the army. You go off from home, and you have to take responsibility for yourself and oftentimes for other people. And that demands a certain level of maturity. Now, the question is, to what extent are we actually, as a species, taking responsibility for the whole, for others? To To what extent, as I mentioned earlier, the brush with death, do we recognize that we are endangering the future of our civilization on this earth? Do we tell ourselves that? No, not really. Other people said, you know, it was a role model. There was someone that really touched my life. And I saw them, and it was a role model that took me beyond the ordinary life and into a life of spirit and service and so on. And so my question is, where are our role models for the human family? They're essentially, I turn on the TV, it's sports. I turn on the TV, it's stars, it's entertainment. Who are our adults? We've got the Dalai Lama, but he's getting old. Another thing that people say is, well, a bigger story. I realized my life had a lot bigger meaning than what I was getting from television and all the rest. A big story about who I am and where I'm going. But what kind of story do we usually tell ourselves as a human family? Right now, the story is you are what you consume. And you're a consumer, and the more stuff you consume, the more you must matter. So we are deeply disconnected in a mature sense from those capacities that would draw us into our adulthood. But they're close at hand. We could create places to experiment where we have to take responsibility for building new kinds of communities and lives. Eco-villages, co-housing communities, I don't know what to call them, but we could do that. We could tell ourselves new stories about who we are on television, on movies, and all the rest. Big stories about the human family and where we're going. We could have television programs and all the rest that gives us that hard look in the mirror so we know what in fact is happening, and it isn't simply a climate change or oil. It is the whole world system is moving into crisis. We could do this. So a key question in my mind, in our moving into our maturity, is one, to see the universe, first of all, as alive. And to see it as alive, I think we need to move out of our adolescence. Because one of the things that an adolescent does is trivialize and diminish often the world around them as they're trying to achieve and understand their own sense of identity. But having acquired that sense of identity, then we can open up to a larger world. As I mentioned earlier, science is suggesting that world is alive. Now, I want to mention very briefly views from the world spiritual traditions that would affirm that. So it isn't simply a scientific insight, it is a spiritual insight as well. And I want to read quotes from just a few of the world's wisdom traditions. This is Meister Eckhart, a Christian mystic. He writes, God is creating the entire universe fully and totally in this present now. Everything God created, God creates now, all at once. A stunning statement. Creation is happening now. Okay, well, let's go to Zen. Suzuki, a teacher, says, my solemn proclamation is that a new universe is created at every moment. The Buddha's deep insight was not the Four Noble Truths, it was an even deeper insight called codependent origination. The Buddha said the universe is an interdependent whole and it's arising at every moment. It's a new universe arising at every moment. If you go to Islam, there's a philosophy called occasionalism, formulated hundreds of years ago, and it says this paper, a moment from now, will not be the same paper it was. There will be a new occasion of that paper. And not only will it be a new occasion of that paper, it will be a new occasion of the entire universe holding this paper. Rumi, a Persian poet and Sufi, he wrote, You have a death and return in every moment. Every moment. Every moment the world is renewed, but we, in seeing its continuity of appearance, are unaware of its being renewed. It's very important. This is the power of meditation. To go down beneath the seamless nature of what appears to be ordinary reality and find it is spontaneously presenting itself as a whole system, an entire universe at every moment. The Quran writes, God keeps a firm hold on the heavens and the earth, preventing them from vanishing away. I could just go on and on. Every tradition, indigenous, Hindu, and on. Every tradition speaks of the universe not only as an interdependent system, but even more fundamentally as an emergent system. It's very important because it means that at every moment, a new universe is being born. A new you is being born. A new opportunity for choice exists. Freedom is fundamental to the universe. It means the power of now is flowing through you, like it or not. You cannot lose your place of spiritual practice because your place of spiritual practice is your engagement with a living universe. And the living universe is flowing through you all the time. Our challenge is simply to relax into the reality of who and what we are, and we are far more than biological beings. We're beings of cosmic dimension and connection, as I was communicating earlier, and as the world wisdom traditions speak about. Now, we have just a couple of minutes in closing, and I would like to then raise another topic about another source of wisdom that is difficult. Many people very much disagree with this point of view, but I feel a real responsibility to share it with you. And I have been a media activist for decades now, for one reason. And it is the mass media is the access to our mass mind. And if we're going to change our collective consciousness, we have to change how we use our collective media, period. Period. And if we allow the mass media to create this cultural trance around the world, and if we sit here as psychologists that know trance, as psychologists that know you can break through the trance, you can come to authenticity and knowing yourself and break into a new world. If we as psychologists do not call that into question, I feel that is profoundly irresponsible, personally. And so this has been an area of work now for over 30 years for me. Time we have. We are a species that is wired for hope. I'm doing some work in neurobiology, and neurobiology now says there are mirror neurons not only in the brain, but through the vagus nerve. Those mirror neurons go down into our heart and even into the viscera. And if you think when you watch a movie, when you get a scary scene, what responds? Not just your brain, it's your whole body responds. We are an intelligent, whole body, sentient, intelligent system. So, we are wired for empathy. There is a biology of hope. But how are we using it? For the last 30 years, studies have been done to look at empathy among college freshmen in the United States. And what they have found is that over the last 30 years, empathy has dropped by 40%. Empathy has dropped by 40%. And there are two reasons why they think that has happened. Number one, we're watching a lot of television. In the United States, the average person watches more than 4 hours of television a day. And in watching television, violence sells. So we're using this profound capacity, the biology of hope and empathy and compassion, to learn fear, violence, conflict. And we're taking it not only into our heads, we're taking it into our entire bodies. And so if we want to transform our future, we need to transform the mass media, which is teaching us not a biology of hope, but a biology of fear, of conflict. And what happens is that if you learn a biology of fear and conflict, it becomes altruistic to harm others on the outs. It's an altruistic act to go to war with people that are outside of your group. And so we, through the mass media, are creating a profound division within ourselves, and we, through this imitative process, are learning to become cultures of violence. And so this is a second area where it could be a source of profound wisdom. The collective consciousness of the species could be coming through. We could be telling ourselves stories of awakening if we wanted. We could be showing ourselves role models of the Dalai Lama and others as parents for this new age. There are all kinds of possibilities that are available to us, but we as citizens are required to step up to the challenge of taking back the airwaves. Now, this is something that so many, I find people around the world are more empowered. For example, in the United States, to go off to the former Soviet Union and say, well, we're going to try and change nuclear policy in this former Soviet Union. They're more empowered to do that than they would be to stay at home and change communications policy in their own country. In the United States, we don't even know that we own the airwaves. People don't even know that. So we are still a very adolescent species. We're an adolescent democracy. We're using our media in adolescent ways. This is all good news. Because it means that with a short amount of movement, Joseph Campbell, let me conclude with this. Joseph Campbell, a world-famous cultural historian and scholar, he said, look, when you grow up, the hero's journey, when you grow up, three things happen. He said, you establish a new relationship with the earth, a new relationship with one another, other people, and a new relationship with the universe. Now, we need a new relationship with the earth, a sustainable relationship with the earth, a sacred relationship with the earth. And it will only be sacred and sustainable if we regard it as alive. If we see it as dead, we're going to exploit it, we're just going to use it up. So we need a sacred regard for the universe. If we're going to live together compassionately with equity, we're going to have a sacred regard for one another. And if I just see other people as biological beings that I'm in competition with and separate from, we're going down a road of conflict and ruin. But if I see you as a sacred being, a soulful being, and I honor that, I can in my heart easily imagine that we're going to come together, pull together in common cause as a human family. Campbell also said that a third change would happen if we really grow up. And that third change is we would have a sacred regard for the universe. And if we look around right now, people are indifferent, essentially, to the universe. It's just out there. And I'm not just speaking of the universe out there, I'm also speaking of the universe right here in front of us. And the fabric of space-time is alive. It's filled with energy. Now, if we are going to move into a new maturity, it will be a new maturity with relationship to the earth, to one another and the rest of life, and with a sacred regard for a living universe that it infuses all of us. So, in final closing, I know we all have our near gifts. This is something that Thich Nhat Hanh said. He said we all have near gifts and true gifts. And many of us are living our lives with our near gifts, things we're pretty good at doing. But I think the world that we face is going to be so challenging and so difficult that our true gifts, our soul gifts, are the only gifts that will actually take us through to the other side, to our early adulthood as a human family. Thank you.